All right, beautiful students, last scene of Act 1, the exposition, really sets up the conflict for the story here. Scene 5, we've changed scenery. We're in Capulet's house in a hall, or basically where the party is going to be. Got a nice little summary here. But basically, Romeo suddenly sees Juliet and falls in love at first sight. Keep that in mind, right? He has no idea who she is. Tybalt recognizes Romeo and tries to kill Romeo, but Capulet calls it off. Very important, because we see a side of Capulet that is more of a peacemaker. He doesn't want to cause any problems at his party, doesn't want to have another brawl. And he actually says that he believes that Romeo acts like a gentleman, right? But Tybalt doesn't care. He still promises revenge. But amongst all of this, Romeo and Juliet are kissing for the first time, declaring that they do love each other. Well, later on, but with that kiss, they kind of seal their fate because they don't know each other's identity until the end. So in the beginning scene here, it's really just chaos. These servants are running around trying to get everything ready. And finally, Capulet comes in. He's welcoming everyone, basically getting the party started. And they're having a little banter about when's the last time they actually had a party like this. And he's saying that it's more than 30 years than they've had a party like that. And in the middle of this, Romeo walks in with his friends. And as soon as he sees Juliet, he asks the servant man, "What lady is that?" And he doesn't really get her name, but notice how he says, "She teaches the torches to burn bright." Anyone that can teach a torch to burn brighter is hot, hot, hot. So obviously Juliet caught his eye because she's gorgeous. And then he compares her to a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. Notice the simile. She's too rich in her beauty. She's too dear for earth. So he equates her to the angels in heaven, calls her a snowy dove trooping with crows. A little juxtaposition of light versus dark, right? And he says, basically, as yonder lady over her fellows shows, here he basically says that she's better than Rosaline. And he plots to touch her hand. And Tybalt, to the side, notices it's a Montague, tells his servant to fetch his rapier, and he's going to strike him dead right there in the party. Now keep in mind, it was just earlier that morning that the brawl occurred in the middle of the square. A lot of people argue because of Tybalt and his fiery disposition. But the prince had just threatened death for the next brawl. And here Tybalt doesn't care. But Capulet catches him and figures out why Tybalt's upset. And he says, "Let Romeo alone," right? Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. So he's got a good reputation amongst the elders of Verona. And he says, "I will not disparage him in this town," right? Be patient. Take no note of him, right? It is my will, and you better respect me. But Tybalt says, "It fits that I should kill him. He does not want to endure him." But Capulet yells at him. Even though Tybalt thinks it's a shame, he says, go to, you are a saucy boy, or basically you're being very insolent, and you're not giving me the respect that you should. Now there's a lot of dashes here, and it's because he's turning his attention back and forth between Tybalt and his guests. He's trying to keep the party lighthearted, but it's hard to do when you've got Tybalt, someone who's just really ticked off and wants to start a fight, barking at you. he decides to respect his uncle's wishes, but he does actually say, even though this intrusion is seeming sweet, it'll convert to bitter gall. So he basically promises revenge at some point, but then he leaves. And we're left with the two lovers. Now, with Romeo and Juliet in their first encounter, they speak in a certain sonnet format, and you can hear the rhythm in their conversation. And basically, they're flirting back and forth. And here, here, Romeo plants one, kisses her. And Juliet, who's obviously never been kissed before and has been given the hint by her mom that looking at someone usually can spark the fire of love, falls deeply for Romeo. You kiss by the book. Now again, notice that motif of the written word, basically describing that Romeo is a great kisser. And then the nurse interrupts. And here, as she sends Juliet on her way, Romeo finds out that she's a Capulet and declares that my life is my foe's debt. Which, pay attention to these words because they will foreshadow what comes to play. Benvolio says, let's take off. Romeo understands that, yes, it's time to go. I've kind of crossed the line here. But Capulet is still ready to party, even though he realizes that, it's very, very late. Now, parties during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance could go till the next day, till the sun came up. So it wouldn't be unheard of that the party had gone so long. So everyone exits except Juliet and the nurse. And as the men are leaving, Juliet is asking the names of the different men. But specifically, she wants to know who he is. And before she knows Romeo is a Montague, she makes this comment that if he is married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. So basically, she's declaring her love for him here. But she finds out something that's just doubly worse. His name is Romeo and a Montague. And she realizes, right? My only love sprung from my only hate. She knows that she's in trouble because she's in love now, but her family hates the Montagues. And she saw it too late. And now she has to deal with loving a loathed enemy. And the nurse kind of hears her mumbling, and Juliet doesn't really tell her exactly what happens. And then they exit. Just to set you up for Act 2.